Welcome to the Strategic Life Podcast, episode 101, Maintaining Your Purpose, with your host, Coach Mario.
Dr. Mario.
Along with Frank.
And
our special guest,
yes,
Pastor Kevin Fischer, lead pastor of Miami Vineyard Community Church, celebrating 30 years as the lead pastor of Miami Vineyard. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yes, 30 years.
Yes.
How does that feel?
It feels like a long time. But because I'm only 35, it just feels like just yesterday.
You started at 5. That was saving souls young.
Yes.
And still young, forever young.
Yes.
Excellent movie with Mel Gibson back in the 90s. And now I'm dating myself.
Yes. You see the gray hairs on the beard?
That's called Salt and Pepper. And
It
it's
is?
coming in lovely.
Ay.
So 30 years. I think when you walked in, you said you'd done some good reflecting this week. What does that look like? How does that feel?
We're going to jump in. We're not going to...
We're going in. I want to know it. I want to know. Are we going to start? Or are we going to go origin?
No, go whatever
Jump
you
in wherever you want
want
to jump in.
That's it. Okay. See, stop interrupting You're interrupting the flow. You're
Hey.
interrupting the vibe.
Leave it to the professionals.
It's your floor. How did that feel? That week of reflection.
It feels, really good. Taking the time to think about 30 years, how it started, how it's going now. And I just got 3 words. If I could summarize 30 years, God is faithful.
Wow.
That's my summary in 30 years. God is faithful.
Excellent.
I like it because for most of you that may or may not know, the average, according to the statistics, for lead pastors to be in the seat at a particular church are roughly between 5 to 7 years. This type of longevity is not necessarily the norm. So I was very, very moved by your story. And of course, Coach talked about maintaining purpose. Did you ever think when you were growing up as a farm boy that you'd be where you are today?
Never. Never. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, I grew up on a dairy farm in just outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Go Packers.
Boo.
It took 2
Shameless
minutes
plug.
to get to the Packers.
Oh my God.
But hey, we're in it.
Yeah.
We're in it already.
So you grew up on a farm?
I
a
did.
Dairy farm? And okay.
I did. I grew up on a dairy farm. Realized early on I didn't want to be a farmer. Went to college in the neighboring state of Iowa for 4 years. It was a private Christian college. But I was an education major. So I moved here to Miami-Dade County because I hated the cold. Hated the cold. So when I was growing up as a kid, I fantasized about living in Florida, Texas, Arizona, or California because I hated the cold.
Yeah.
So I had a friend in college, Miami boy, grew up in Kendall, and we moved here to Miami back in 1985. And so I got a job in Dade County Public Schools teaching school. I was an education major in an urban school, in Mays Middle School. And I did that for a number of years as the Miami Vineyard just got started. Actually, I didn't found the church. I didn't plant the church. The church was started by another guy. But my wife Debbie and I, we found the church, and it was 7 people. My wife Debbie and I made 8 and 9. Wow. We were meeting in a living room in North Miami Beach. And a few years after being a part of the church, the pastor left to go back to Indiana, where he's from. And he asked me when I was 27 if I wanted to become the lead pastor of the church. I said, absolutely not.
I was waiting for the absolutely, I feel the calling, but okay,
Not.
so it wasn't. Okay.
I was on the mountain, and all of a sudden the
It
bush burned, and there I was.
It was absolutely not. It was no way. And he said, look, he said, would you pray about it? And I'm a Jesus follower, and of course I said no.
I'll pray for you to find someone else.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Oh, wow. Okay. See, a little bit of mind.
I'm not even joking. That's what I did. But I said, look, if this is what you want, then I'm in. And I mean, God spoke in some supernatural ways to communicate to me that he was in this. And it was a wild move for me because I just got my master's degree and I was going to be a career teacher or go into the professional world from education, and to make that change and to make that switch. So I said yes. I did an internship on staff for 15 months, and then I became the lead pastor January 17th of 1993, which was just this past Tuesday. That was a Sunday, all those 30 years ago. And my first year, under my amazing, incredible leadership, I grew the church from 200 to 100 people. Honey, I shrunk the church.
Frank, did you get that? He grew the church from 200 to 100 people.
Yeah.
Honey, I shrunk the church. Wow. I sucked at this.
Oh.
And I told God I sucked at this. And I told God before he said yes to me, I sucked at this. I said, God, I suck at this.
This success story is going kind of wild. I didn't know.
I'm telling you, this is the reality. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted to do. After my first year, you have no idea, year one, how I cried myself to sleep. So many nights. I mean, you take a church that is 200 people, and under your leadership, it goes down to 100. That's on you. That's not anybody else. Yeah. That's on you. That's in your leadership. It's you. It's your style. It's your whatever. That's on you. You're the boss. You're the leader. And I was ready to go back to teaching because I knew how to do that.
Yeah,
I was good at that, but I wasn't good at this. And I actually traveled to. Can I tell just a short story?
Yes, please.
This is a God story. So another pastor friend of mine invited me to come to a gathering he had of pastors, maybe 25, 30 people in his backyard over in Cape Coral, Florida. And he had a guest who has a gifting, a prophetic gifting, a revelatory gifting, this guy. And I didn't know the guy. Guy never knew me. So I'm a young guy sitting there in 30 people sitting in lawn chairs in the backyard. And this guy, his name was John Paul Jackson. This guy said, "Hey, young man in the red polo shirt, would you stand up, please?" It's me. Back in the day. He said, "Is that your wife with you? Would you stand up, please, too?" And we stood up. And this guy, not knowing me, never met him, started telling me my life story. Never knew me. And I mean, just, I was ready to step aside, but he said, look, this is what you've been going through. This is what you've been experiencing. And I mean, he was on the button, boom, 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 on point. And I was like, whoa, dude, how do you know that stuff about me? And then he said, look, here's what I think God is showing me. If you will stay, if you will commit, if you will stay doing this, it's not going to change overnight, but over a period of time, he said, what I see is from a Bible story, the biblical story, the spies coming out of the land of Egypt with the grapes, the huge grapes hanging over their shoulders. He said, I see thousands. He said, I see tens of thousands of lives being changed if you will stay. I mean, the story that changed me, that supernatural encounter changed my trajectory. And I knew I was called already, but I was ready to go back. But that supernatural trajectory at that point in that moment of my time in my life that propelled me to stay.
So you were still on, that was my question, sorry to interrupt. You were still on the verge of, do I go back to teaching? Is this really what
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh,
so
big
Crossroads.
I was at a major
Yeah.
crossroads after year one.
Wow.
Major crossroads.
So
I'm telling you, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you guys 30 years later. I don't believe if that encounter hadn't happened to me after year one.
So what I like that I heard from that already was your train of thought. If you thought about it or you didn't, step one here in maintaining your purpose, and there's nothing pre-written here, so we're just going off it. But you mentioned how the church grew from 200 to 100 under your leadership.
Is that grew?
It is to today. But at the same time, that's an accountability piece that you took on right away. And you acknowledged that, that you, as you mentioned, like that was under my leadership.
Absolutely.
That it went down. So you have to be accountable in your path of trying to maintain your purpose.
Yes, leaders must be accountable and responsible for what they do or fail to do.
Yeah.
Everything falls on leadership. I love Kevin, the language that you use there, where for other people it would be 200 and I lost 100. No, you grew the 100, because the way I'm seeing it and I'm hearing it, with our experience as coaches and pastors is, there's a time and a season for people that some need to be released if they're not going to allow God to use a man like yourself with a vision for that particular organization or the church. Yeah, wow. And I like the languaging because for some people, they go, well, I lost 100 members, and then they start going into that. But the fact that you utilize the word grow and where you are today, which we'll get to, I don't want to preempt anything. This is amazing.
Well, and then I had another encounter. I'll tell you another encounter I had about 4 or 5 years after that. So I stuck to it. The church grew from 100 back to 200. And then after about 5 or 6 years, we were kind of stalled at between 200 and 300, which, I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the dream that I felt God gave me. And it's not the number. There's so many people here in Miami-Dade County that needs to be reached with how much God loves them and cares about them and needs to be in a relationship with him. That's my passion. That's what I want to do. And there's so many more people we can reach, but I was stalled. Mm-hmm. And our founding pastor, Jim, came back to Miami. We went and played around the golf together. And I was bemoaning where I was at. And I was blaming at that point, I would talk to accountability. 5 years later, I'm blaming everyone and everyone around me. I'm blaming this and this person and this person and the team and the people I got. And I'm just blaming. And I still remember this. We're in the third fairway of this golf course. And Jim looks at me. He says, hey, Kevin, can I tell you something? I said, nah, man, you can tell me anything. Go ahead, whatever you want to tell me. He looked at me. He said, this church is going to grow when you grow. I wanted to take his head off with a golf club.
Do you remember which iron you had in your hand?
Say, I'm still holding a golf club, smarty guy.
I had a 7-iron.
There you go.
And it was going to be a weapon. I mean, because I didn't want to, at that. So I took responsibility from day one, but here I am 5 years later, and I'm trying to blame everyone and everyone around me because it's stuck. But the problem was, so I went on a journey at that point. I mean, that hit deep. But I hated him for 2 days, but I got over it. When someone tells you something that you need to hear, but you don't want to hear?
Right.
Listen here. The truth hurts, so you stop that right now. Okay? Enough of that.
So I was stalled out, but I went after it. When he said this church is going to grow when you grow, I went after it. And I became a learner. I read everything I could read. I went to every conference I could attend. I made appointments with pastors of churches in the Vineyard world that I knew, that I had a relationship with, of larger churches, and I learned everything I could learn and grow. And I believe the reason the church looks like it does today, and the reason the church went on the trajectory it went on, was because of the trajectory I went on. Because as you said, Dr. Mario, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Wow.
So, 200 to 300. How many years in are you at that? You said it's about 5 years
7?
later, so it'd be about
5, 6, 7.
7 years under. And so, what year are we at this point?
Probably 2000, 1993, probably 2000.
Yeah, 2000.
Okay. So, What do you think after what potentially, if you can recall, I know there's a lot of great things in this brain of yours, but if you could recall after that second moment, what were some of the things that you did differently, maybe, that ignited this new direction, or maybe even this new hunger or this new...
Well, the very first thing I did was I took responsibility for it again. It was mine. It was my responsibility to grow this church. It wasn't going to grow just because of, circumstantially. I had to take responsibility for it. And I intentionally invested in myself, and then I turned it around, and the things I was learning, I intentionally invested in the people around me. That I realized that their growth and their development, God has entrusted to me. And it, just like my dairy farmer days, the development of the cattle and your milk production of your herd is based upon how well you're farming, not the luck of the draw. No. It's how well you're farming. Okay. It's how well you're doing what you're doing. And so I turned that around. I invested in the people. I started having leadership meetings and investment meetings and these kinds of things. And I started to grow the team around me. And as the team around me grew, they became healthier. And then they turned around and grew the people around them. And so that's really what changed everything, was that dynamic of investing in your team that can invest in other people that can really help you become what. So I want them to become everything God designed them to be. They turn around and help everybody become that. And that really started changing things around. I developed and grew leaders other than myself.
Yourself. Yeah, I think that's important. Specifically when it comes down to action and results, right? Your results is a direct reflection upon how you handle the problem, aka the problem meaning what your mission is and fulfilling your purpose. And if you're not getting the result, it's because you're not taking action on the problem. Now we're talking mathematical, and my math grades weren't that high, so this is rocket science. I feel like an aeronautical engineer in here.
I remember your
All right,
seventh grade.
Okay, guys, we don't need the personal jabs. We're here for the message, not the messenger. Okay, so let's relax.
Seventh grade. Just saying.
I thought banter was encouraged.
It was highly.
Jobs like
highly. What's going on here?
Again,
changing the rules. Oh, the higher.
But essentially, when there's a result. Okay, I lost my train of thought.
You're like the Dolphins.
You're horrible at math.
You're horrible at math. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to talk anymore.
Okay, so here's what I love it. I love it. So far we have accountability. Mm-hmm. And what I just heard from him was ownership. So in that 2 to 7 year period, notice how he's been talking about some of the things that we share as coaches, where people are in the effect, where they're blaming people, persons, and things, and not taking ownership, as opposed to when you take ownership, where you're creating and you're designing, because he's growing other leaders. I love that.
And at the same time, he's acknowledging that, and cancel if it doesn't apply. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're acknowledging that you started blaming others, but then you took the responsibility once again.
He took ownership.
I think this means that you're human.
Wow.
I think.
Despite the fact that he likes Green Bay, but that's okay.
Well,
Listen, at the end of the day, no one is more surprised at the success of this church than me. Nobody.
I love
Nobody.
I love the transparency, Kevin. That's
nobody.
That's so you.
Okay. So 7 years. What was next for you? So let's say you start propelling. You start. The church is growing. What do you feel if you can recollect, and just so for all you listeners back home in your cars or wherever you are, nothing here is scripted. So when our guests are coming on, it's a conversation. We just want to know where everyone's at. So what can you potentially recollect, maybe even at that rate of growth, and not 500 people, 600 people to where you are today? Where are you today, actually?
Yeah, we have about between 4,000 and 5,000 people that call the place home.
4,000 and 5,000 people.
They call us home.
That's amazing. Home.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah. So it's been a wild ride, and it's been a wild journey. So for me, it was just when you get into it 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it's continue to grow, continue because the growth of the leader is so important. And so continue to, because leaders are learners, and you got to continue to be learning all the time. Things change. Life is changing. I mean, what happened, 30 years ago is not the same as happening today. People are in different places. Their lives are different. World is different. Culture is different. So many things are different. So you got to continue to learn all the time. And then I think what can happen, and speaking of purpose, what can happen is you can very easily get sidetracked away from the purpose of whatever it is that you feel you're called to. And there were many moments in time when I had an opportunity to be sidetracked away from the vision and the dream that God has been giving me, especially when you have a group of, like, say, 50 people come in that are talented, that have resources, and they come in a group and they meet with you and they want, hey, we'd like to see the church do this, but this is not exactly where you feel God called you to have the church go to. Mm-hmm. So you've got to say no to that, which is very tempting, to say yes to stay where God has called you to do. And that has been over and over and over again, to stay focused, single-minded, focused on what God has called us to do.
Now, would you say that's, again, because when you have the larger church and you have the opportunities to do more things for more people, and obviously the blessings that come in with having a larger church, is it because of that would you consider it maybe a growing pain? Not a pain necessarily, but so many options, you have to kind of dial it in to maintain your direction?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. And you got to, and it's not easy to always maintain that. It's easy. I mean, you get all these things coming at you, and you get people with these ideas, and you get staff members with ideas, and all these ideas. It's hard to stay focused on the main and the plan all the time. But we always had a single-minded purpose: loving all people into a growing relationship with Jesus. That's always been our purpose, always been our design. So there's lots of other things you could do, lots of great things you could do. Mm-hmm. But we had to stick to what God called us to do.
Okay.
What would you say to people who don't know their purpose or who are struggling to find their purpose? Because it seems like you're saying, hey, this was presented to me, and then I prayed and then ran with it. But for some people, they either haven't seen what's been presented to them, or it just hasn't been presented to them yet. For you, it happened in your 20s. For some people, it could happen in their 30s, 40s, or even later.
Or they had one and lost it.
Correct. So what would you say, what advice would you give to people who are either A, trying to find their purpose, or B, don't have one?
Yeah. Well, I would say first of all that God has got a destiny and a purpose for everybody. I really believe that. God has a future and potential for everyone. Now, everybody's purpose is different. Everybody's going to be pastor at church or do this or do the lead a company, whatever your purpose is. But I would encourage people to very simply pray and ask God. Say, God, I want to be open. Be an open book to God. Because sometimes I think we give God parameters. God, I want to know my purpose, but I want my purpose to be here or here or here.
Yeah.
Okay, that may not be where God wants you to be. That's where you want to be. But at the end of the day, I encourage people to be where God wants them to be. So God, I'm willing, I'm open, I'm listening, God. What is it that you want me to do? And it may be outside of the boxes that I've created. What do you want me to do? I think that's a good place to start. I think that's a very vulnerable place to start. I think it's an open place to start. And I think that's where God wants us to start. I'd start there. And then I would talk to some people around me who know me and say, hey, what do you I'm trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do with my life? I'd talk to people around you. You got some people around you. Everybody's got people around you that kind of knows you. And you might get some ideas and run the ideas past people. And I'd read, and I'd encourage people to read. And I think with those things out there in front of you, you're gonna figure it out. And I think also God puts passions in people. He puts desires in people. And follow those passions. Those came from God.
Mm-hmm. So now, for somebody who does have their purpose and is scared to go after it, or their passion, because we see a lot of that too,
good
right?
Old fear.
Yeah, so we see a lot of that. And to that, like I tell people all the time, and we've said it here before, right? Surround yourself with people who share your passions, not the same problems. If you're surrounding yourself with people who have the same problems, they haven't been able to solve it, you're not going to. But your passions will drive you forward. Your passion is a better driver than your fear, anxiety, problems, and your negativities. That'll help you overcome things. And people who have the same passions are probably already solved the problems you have in your life, right? So with that being said, now and we see it all the time from your perspective and your journey, you have your purpose, you have your passion, but you're not taking the next steps. Why do you think that is? And what would you give advice to listeners who are having that issue?
Yeah, they're not taking the next step. We'll talk about they're taking the next step because of fear. Fear is a lot of different things, but that's almost always why we don't take the next step is because there is a 4-letter word involved. It's not a cuss word, but it's a big word.
Goat.
You ready?
Was it?
It's called risk.
Ooh, I was close.
There's always risk involved. So what are you risking? You're risking all kinds of things. You're risking reputation. You're risking your own reputation. You're risking reputation, what people can think about me. You're risking resources. You're risking energy. You're risking a season or time of your life. There's
comfort.
All those things. I mean, we can make a long list, right? You can make a long list of things you're risking. But the reason, you asked me, what's the reason people don't take that step? I'll tell you what it is that they're not willing to take the risk, that what's involved to accomplish that dream.
They'd rather settle.
Which is a trickle down because they don't want to take the risk because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to, and some people, they'll take the comfort in knowing that they're not a loser because meaning like that they failed, not calling someone names specifically, but they know they can't have failed because they didn't try. And that's okay. And you know what? If I don't start a business, I won't fail at one.
Yep.
And then I don't have to go there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Specifically.
Yep. Absolutely.
But I like what you said a moment ago, essentially, specifically, is that maybe your definition and your being the individual who's asking for something or asking God for something is getting the blessing, but not in the way they want it.
Yeah.
And so in coaching and some of the framing that we use it's called release the form. Like, yes, God didn't bring you the yellow Lamborghini, but the red Ferrari that's used for 3 years ago is still a pretty good.
No,
it's pretty good.
Not. No, okay.
But you released the form, right? I have my own boat, but it wasn't the one I wanted. I got the second hand one. You have to release the form. It's not always going to be exactly what you want it. And funny enough, my sister sent me a video yesterday, and it's a young kid running out into this front yard, and he's like, "It's okay, God. It's okay. I understand." But I'll wait. I'll be patient. I trust you. And it's just like a little boy. He's like 3 years old. He's like, it's okay, God. I understand. And he's looking at the sky. I trust you.
Wow.
Sometimes it's not always.
The reason for that is, and I had one of my clients send me this the other day. You need to get out of your own way, but a lot of people block their blessings. You shouldn't block your blessings, right?
That. Don't block your blessings.
Yeah, because that happens all the time. There's things that are thrown in our way. There's little miracles that happen to us every day, and we have a tendency of rejecting them or saying no. And it comes from a weird psychological place, right? Oh, I don't want to bother, so I won't do this. No. Don't block your blessing. Accept the gift. Accept the compliment. Go towards that person. There's a lot of things that we say no to without actually saying the words no, and that is a form of what Coach is saying, where you're stopping yourself from growing. Some of us might see it as risk. Hey, there's a risk to doing this, and you don't realize that calling is your blessing. That with that calling, you're going to be able to do greater good.
Mm-hmm. What's exciting for me is to hear along your journey that as part of growing others, you've also supported and have grown other vineyard churches, other people, other pastors. Tell us a little bit about what motivates you to do that.
Well, I want to see, part of what I want to see is I want to see every individual that I have influence over to some degree. I want to see everybody meet. I want to see them reach their fullest, highest redemptive potential. I want to see them reach that. And I want to encourage them sometimes to step into what they're reluctant to be step into. And so we've planted 18 daughter churches out of our church over 30 years. We started 18 churches, and I dare say that most of them are started by people who never in their wildest dreams had ever think they'd ever pastor a church. But think of the disciple.
I see a theme going here.
He's like, I'm going to start appointing people just as I was. You're the number one draft pick. You're the number one.
Come on, think of the 12. Think of the 12 Jesus chose. Did they ever think they're going to be chosen for that? Yeah. Those are the most unlikely people ever in the history of the world to be chosen to be the 12 disciples. I was the most unlikely candidate, and many of them didn't think they could ever do this. But it wasn't. I'm not encouraging them to do something that's out of their wheelhouse. It's look, you got the gifts, you got the talents, you got the ability. They needed someone to believe in them and someone to push them and someone to say, I got your back. You're not out there alone. We're going to be on a phone, once a month, once a week for an hour. We're going to talk through this. We're going to talk about this. And I want to see you succeed. So I think in life, I said this at our staff meeting just this past week. I think in life, we have to decide if we're going to be the king or if we're going to be a kingmaker. Wow. And I decided I'm going to be a kingmaker. Not be the king, meaning I'm going to invest my life in others so that they can be everything God designed them to be.
That went deep. I like it.
Essentially,
that was a mic drop, man.
That went deep,
like,
man.
Here comes the joke. Executive producer, say the joke.
No.
We've used it in previous episodes. Come on, don't disappoint the people.
Which one? What are we talking about?
Don't drop the mics; they're expensive.
Oh, I've never said that before in my life.
Right.
These were free. I was the 1 millionth customer they handed these.
Yeah.
I went into Guitar Center. Guitar Center, if you use this, shameless plug, we need more mics. But ultimately,
Send a check. $2.99 Alejandro.
But that's your office.
Yeah. Sweet 418 Coral Gables 3313.
No.
Of course it is.
Stroke a check.
Yeah.
Speechless after that one.
What?
Okay, so all right, so
If we get a check or free mics, I'm not
boy.
sure.
Hey.
If you guys are gonna do that,
I need you to focus on the purpose. See, you're losing. You're not following his advice. So we're focusing on the purpose. So from 200 to 100 to up to 5,000, and always while still being able to maintain this purpose. What do you see in the future as your purpose, and you proceed to move on?
50,000.
Hey, before I answer that, let me go back to
You go wherever you want.
Let me go back to what does it take?
Absolutely.
It takes people around you supporting you and believing in you. I've had a wife for 30, it'll be 37 years this year. We've been married. She has been a supporter in the background for a lot of it. Now she's coming more in the foreground. But she has been behind me every step of the way. And her believing in me, the guy who started the church kept believing in me, people around you that loves you, that believe in you. Because listen, we all know nobody has any success alone. Behind every successful man is a great woman and a shocked mother-in-law.
You should have sent that to Aaron Rodgers last time.
No, Jesus.
Here we go.
$50 million a year. No.
There's been so many people around me that have been so supportive of this that's one of the. So what does it take? What does it take to stay focused on purpose and make a dream happen? It's a community. Nobody does this thing alone.
Now, Pastor Kevin, Coach,
You're good.
Help us help people. How did you find your supporters? Because that's another struggle most people have. People want, they want to sell flowers, but they stop at the fact that, their mom and dad, their sisters, their best friends not buying the flowers. So they're like, oh, well, if I can't sell it to people around me. And we tell people all the time, and specifically in the business world, like, your supporters aren't your family members. Your supporters are your clients. Your supporters might not be your family members, but there's other people that do want to help you. Just complete strangers can have better intentions. So what would you tell people out there? Hey, I have my purpose. I have my drive. I'm willing to take the next step. I could use some support.
Yeah. You got to go find them. I don't know to tell you where to find them. I mean, for me, my wife was a huge supporter.
Was there somebody specifically that you weren't expecting to be a big supporter that became that? Somebody that maybe you said, hey, you know what? Like, I can't believe this person supported my dream. Or it was always, hey, no, everybody just was aligned with it and they fell with it.
No, people weren't always aligned with it. But I prayerfully would go after some people. I mean, in a good way. But you talk about supporters. I mean, one of my best supporters is a pastor friend of mine in Phoenix. But I heard him speak one time at a conference, and I went up to him afterwards and said, "Hey, I'd love to spend a couple hours with you. Can I get a couple hours with you?" And he said, "Man, if you fly out to see me, I'll give you this day and this day and this day." So I went after that. I saw people that I said, man, I'd like to be like that. I'd like to be like that. I'd like to be like that. So I intentionally went after those people and said, hey, can I get some time with you? And we became very, very close friends over the years. So again, we got to take a step in that direction. I mean, sometimes God just gives them to you, thank God. But oftentimes, God's sending a boat, but we might have to swim out to it.
Ooh, yes. There's a lot of intentionality behind that.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is a big piece that's missing today, where there's individuals of all generations. So it's not just one generation, it's all generations, that it's a sense of entitlement. And it's a sense of bring it to me so I can cook it, or whatever the case may be, instead of let's go after it. I'm hearing you going after it.
Absolutely. You have to.
Wow.
Did you have a mentor throughout this process?
I've had multiple mentors, yes.
Can you speak as to how important that was for you?
Oh, it's ginormous. I still now have a monthly phone call with a leadership coach. Still now, after all these years. I am also a coach to many other people, but I have a monthly phone call with this guy, and we talk through life, we talk through marriage, we talk through family, we talk through church life, we talk through staffing issues. And at this point in the journey, there's not too many things I face anymore that I haven't seen before. So what he's going after for me is not so much how to handle the world of what I do professionally, but his question to me every week is this question: how's your soul? How's your soul?
Has anyone in this room ever been asked that?
Yes.
How's your soul?
Yes.
Those 3 words were said to you?
Yes.
No one's ever said. I've never even heard that. That's amazing.
One of my coaches.
How's your soul?
How's your soul? See,
Yeah.
that's a question that
Somebody cares.
Yeah, well, no, that encompasses everything.
Yeah.
Because if you're not true to who you are on the inside, you've got nothing to share with anybody on the outside.
Can't give what you don't have.
So how's your soul? Wow. How's your soul? How's that internal?
I think I'd cry if someone asked me. Like if someone just like alone in a room and like, hey, how's your soul?
Yeah,
I'd
how's
be
your
like,
soul?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to search.
I ask people that question a lot when I mentor people, and they say the same thing you did. They said,
Yes.
dude, and they just sit back like they take them out to lunch. And hey, can I ask you a question? Yeah, man. How's your soul? They push back from the table like,
Yeah.
No one's ever asked me that question before. I don't even know how to answer that. He said, but thank you for asking that question.
Huh.
And I think that's a question.
That's deep, dude.
I mean, if we're gonna do that, let's go around the room.
No, for me,
your soul?
it was a chaplain that I was in clinical pastoral education after the death of my grandson, your nephew, a couple of years later, and I took a 6-month sabbatical. And when I entered into the program, Beverly Ross chaplain from Vitas. That's the first question she asked me. How's your soul? And I went like that too. Because no one had ever asked me that question as a coach. And I've been in coaching since 1992. No one had ever asked me that question.
And you're 35 too. So.
I'm 39. We agreed.
You're
He's
older.
35,
You're
I'm
older.
39.
It's
35, 39.
he's got the hair. You lost yours, so you're clearly older.
Totally. What's your excuse?
It's just all this thinking is just my hair follicles running away from my brain.
Okay. Frank, save him.
No.
No, didn't think so.
I can't save his soul.
I've been trying. We're 100 episodes in.
It is such a great coaching question
Yeah.
that is rarely asked unless you've gone through what you and I've gone through. Those kinds of journeys will take you there. I've often heard you, and thank God for our relationship, I've heard you say this year in particular, like 2022, was a challenging year, and some of the other things that you've shared with me. And I believe that transparency amongst leaders at our level is what actually prompts us to get the help we need when we need it the most. Yeah. And that, Tony Robbins, who I worked with 3.5 years, says every coach needs a coach. Mm-hmm. Every pastor needs a coach.
So I want to turn the steering wheel a little bit into a
left or right.
It's always the right way, baby.
Okay,
it's always the right thing.
All right, just checking.
Good answer. Good answer.
So he's done all this. He being Pastor Kevin. If you're not watching, if you're just listening,
if you just jumped on the
watch,
broadcast,
the YouTube channel is so spicy and good because you can see us. You know what I mean?
Oh, and Spotify too.
You can watch on Spotify.
Watch on Spotify.
Correct. But at the same time, you had like 1 or 2 children. 1 or 2.
5.
He's got 5.
5 biological children.
There you go.
Plus, I've been honored to have the privilege of raising in and out, off and on about 5 others.
Taking in other children. So I know, and this is the turn I'm talking about is the turn about family. So maintaining your purpose is the topic of the podcast. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of good themes and techniques and having mentors and being accountable and all that. And as we talked about, for instance, having a good woman in the back end or a good spouse on the other end, you also have children, which in my understanding, in some cases, especially with some people that are amazing, they get to travel a lot. So how do you maintain the purpose and still maintain the family, keeping everyone on the same page? Because, everyone can be into, children, especially as they get older. Mine are still young, so I still get to, hear these great stories. I want to be a YouTuber. And I'm like, that sounds fun. Let's throw the ball.
I said that once. Like,
not you.
Okay, quick story.
Yes.
There's been people in my life all along. How do you maintain your purpose? You have people in your life who are a gift from God who help you maintain your purpose when you're getting off track. Mm-hmm. Because everybody's got blind spots. You need people to help point those out to you. Mm-hmm. One of those was my wife. So your question, I was deep in the throes of growing this church, and it took every ounce of energy I had, and I was throwing everything into the church. At the same time, we're having a bunch of kids. We had 5 kids in 8 years. That's another story.
That's good times.
My wife wouldn't leave me alone, but that's another story.
Don't go there, Frank. I saw you, man. I saw you.
I didn't get the joke.
This is the pure
you're
podcast.
right.
So
when we're done, I'll ask questions.
So I'm jumping all into the church, and I thought I was also being a good dad at home, but I realized I wasn't. And so my wife, I'm a sports dude, love sports, play sports now, big sports dude. So my wife has a way of putting things into a way that you can understand it. And, she let it ride for a long time, just handling the duties at home and that kind of thing. She sat down once, she said, Kevin, you think you're doing a good job at church, and you are. You think you're also doing a good job at home. I would say not so much. You think that you're in the starting 5 of a basketball team at home. And in reality, you haven't even made the team.
Wow.
And I played basketball my whole life, even a year in college. She said that to me. I was undone. So to answer your question, I wasn't doing real well at home, but that turned my world around. And it was not overnight. It wasn't this quick decision. You know, guys think we can go to the gym one day and all of a sudden, you know, we got to figure it out.
Looks good. I'm good for the
baby,
year.
come on,
I'm
come
good
on.
for the year.
Dude, this was a slow process. This took me, I think, a couple of years to get it to the point where you know, I'd ask her. I said, "How am I doing? How am I doing?" You know, a couple months in, she'd say, "Okay, all right. You're on the bench, but you're not playing the game yet. You're on the bench. You're 15 out of 15 people on the team." 3 months later, "How am I doing?" "Hey, you're working your way. You're working your way." "How am I doing?" You're seeing some playing time." "How am I doing?" And the day she told me I made the starting five was a day that I just cried and wept. Because I've always in my mind, my family was my priority. My family was always my priority because I told the church, if I lose my family, I've lost everything. My first ministry is to my family. Always my first ministry is to my family, my family, my family, my family. Yeah. And if I lose my family, what's the point of anything? So when she told me, when I finally got to the point where she said, you made the starting five, I was like, yeah. But the church still had to be run during this whole time, and all that had to be happening. But nobody makes it to the finish line alone.
Amazing. So did you buy her, like, I'm going to shift it. We're going to bring some happiness in it. Did you buy her a cat or two? Because I know you love cats.
He went there.
Green Bay Packers and kitties. This is what this guy lives for.
No, I don't live for cats. Are you kidding me?
I don't get the joke. I know you purchased a cat recently.
My wife loves cats. I hate cats.
And how many do you have?
I would figure the joke, but
we used to have 3 inside. One died. My prayers were answered. No, I'm just. Can you edit that?
We'll write his email.
We should start there. So talk to us about your 30 years.
So we had.
He's
3.
here all week.
Now we have 2. And my wife has 2 inside and 9 outside that she takes care of.
Frank took a big gulp there.
9?
He thought he heard wrong.
Are you speaking German?
9 is 0 in German.
So you have 11 cats?
I have 0.
Not him.
Your wife has 11 cats?
She does. And if she had her dream, she'd probably have 70.
And you don't have a farm.
No, she'd be the woman that would be arrested, for having a cat take over her house. Details at 11.
Yeah.
She'd be that one.
Florida woman. Oh, here we go. We already know that. It starts like that.
Florida woman, Florida man makes news every day.
Yeah, exactly. There is a website or an Instagram page. It's like Florida Man or something like that. And every day they throw fun facts up. No, so what I want to get at, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's impactful because whether you're starting a business, whether you're starting...
okay. I'm sorry.
What happened? You want a cat?
No,
we can arrange it.
We can arrange it.
If you say a small prayer,
please take a cat.
Let me rewind the last. Let me rewind the last 2 minutes. Right.
So you're shocked as I was yesterday about Shakira.
There's 11 cats. We prayed for one to die, and then Mark, thanks for sharing that. That's impactful. 11 cats and hoping one dies. That's impactful.
Not that.
That's this
Go Padawan.
We're talking about.
Does this answer your question as to where do you guys come from on the podcast?
Yeah.
Now you have your answer.
I think you got it,
man. Please bring me back.
Absolutely.
So
and that's following the emotional part of the episode.
I had to balance it out with cats. Everyone, come on. TikTok, Reels, Instagrams. Yeah. It all comes back to some cat video. Playing the piano,
guy, so
playing chopsticks with their little, something.
I've seen it all.
I got you.
So, and what I really want everyone to take away from this being serial, as I'm always very serious, is that you can do and follow your purpose and find that balance with your family, whether you have 5 kids and 11 teen cats, or 1 or 2 children, because I know I can understand. I have 3 myself.
Cats?
No, children.
Oh, children.
But sometimes
he does have 1 cat with 6 paws or whatever you call that.
Toes?
Yeah,
6 toes.
6 toes. On each.
I don't know. I'm not a cat guy. He's got the cat has 6
guys
toes
really
on every foot.
Correct.
I do not want to talk about cats.
An anomaly.
Please, let's move on.
Complete.
Yes,
I'm with him. Let's move on.
He's like, he's praying for
More
I'm praying you'd move on.
So again, whether you have a large family, small family, there is a balance, and you can find that. And sometimes you may hear people on the the head coach guiding you, blowing whistles, but you can't. You have to pay attention.
Yes.
You have to pay attention to what's going on around you. So we like to use the phrase, you have to have sensory acuity. You have to know what's going on around you at all times. And if you don't, and if someone does bring that to your attention, you have to understand, and if they are, they may not be, but they are doing it with positive intention, right? I think one of the things that you have to be open to is feedback. And an easy way to give that to somebody is to say, hey, I was just wondering, are you open to a little bit of feedback? Instead of just saying, I think the way you handled this today, would you be open to something? Because then you're taking some, it's not just, putting someone on the defense.
No, what's encouraging about Kevin's story is, as he shared about Debbie, and again, thanks for the vulnerability, is the fact that many men and or many women believe that they are actually present, that their presence is in their family when they're actually just performing. It's just tasks, because I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to bring home the bacon, I got to throw out the trash, or whatever the case may be. There's nothing that's going to substitute your presence with your family. And I completely agree with Kevin. Your first ministry from the ecclesiastical perspective is your family.
Great word.
Yes. And your question way back 20 minutes ago before we got on cats was, I've turned down a lot of offers to speak and go because I wanted to be present. I wanted to be here. So I was not a traveling speaker. I had many opportunities to travel across the pond, Australia, New Zealand, South America, all kinds of places. But I said no to that because I know I needed to be present when my kids were growing up.
That's huge, because there are a lot of pastors. I mean, we have Dr. Mario's also Pastor Mario, if you didn't know. But obviously it's something he's done for many years. So I've overheard and known personal stories of people in growing up in the church as a pastor's kid, which we all know they're some of the best ones. PKs. Yes, the PKs, pastor's kids. I'm here. But ultimately you've heard of people and just being gone all the time. And pastors who travel so much, and so they're out there spreading the word, doing their thing, and home is
abandoned
on the back burner, and the home is falling apart. So that
happens. That happens everywhere, right?
We're business as well.
Not here. We're free of that.
Yeah, not here. Not in this room.
But continue. Tell us how it's happening for you right now.
I see a story coming. I can feel it,
man. So I'll work backwards. For us, because we do pay attention, but for you guys, don't automatically assume that that's the case, right? Because you don't know where you're lacking and who you're lacking. So it's always important for you to do that temperature check, right? To ask your people around you, right? So that's one way. Second thing, which Dr. Mario mentioned, it's a difference in values. Because I can walk in and say, well, I'm bringing money to the relationship. Look at the house, look at the car, look at the clothes, and look at everything we have, and look at the school junior's in. But that might not be important. That might not be what's going to sustain the relationship, right?
Correct.
So
it's like their love language. You're not loving them in the way that they,
Well, at the end of the day,
correct. So, but it's just a values system as to, well, I'm providing this, and this is coming at a big sacrifice.
Yes.
And so what's happening is this person is not that they're not acknowledging it. It's just it's not fulfilling them. So you're thinking, I'm fulfilling this person with my sacrifice. No, that's not the way that works.
But at the end of the day, what you said, at the end of the day, Jesus said this. What does it profit a person to gain the whole world and yet lose their own soul? How's your soul at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. And we all know, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. We all know at the end of the day, that stuff you're describing, it's good, nothing wrong with it, but it just doesn't satisfy.
Well, there's more to that story, and I suggest you guys go in, right? Because when Jesus said that was when he was in the forest, and it was his first encounter with, right? They don't mention it in the Bible by name, but it's the first time he encounters Satan, right? It's the first time he has, that's where they tie it back in as to, Adam and Eve and the snake. So this is when Jesus is, 40 days, 40 nights. And that's one of the moments.
He went to church.
Are we checking? Yeah.
He went to church. He read the Bible. Dale, bro.
Right? And so, but,
So when are you coming to Vineyard?
You got to go back in before you burst into flames.
Before you crash and burn? Is that what you're saying?
see, this is, and so,
Water on. It's hot. I'm fine.
Water baptism coming up.
no, but that's a big part of it. And, you know, those are good things. Even if you're not religious, I recommend, it's a great read. Read the Bible. It's a great read, and
I think I saw that on the bestseller a couple years back. The Bible.
You think?
But to Pastor Kevin's point, right? Like, yeah. Now, if you go down where that character said that in that story, right? And we're all characters in our own stories, but when you see that, it's what are you encountering? Mm-hmm. You know, again, to stick with that, Jesus was very, very aware of who is asking them and what he's giving up for that. Right. So you need to make sure that you know what you're doing, what you're giving up. And in this case, it could be a loved one. It could be a family member. It could be something that's very near and dear to you. So at the end and we see it, right? Oh, I kept the business. I kept the house. I kept the car, this and this, but wife's not there. The kids aren't around. You're a lacking father. The relationship's not there. And it might not present itself immediately. You might see it 5-10 years on the line when the kid's older. So
Life is going to share distractions. Temptation is going to come, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Satan, right? Sometimes our greatest enemy is our own mind.
Yeah.
We're not controlling our own mind.
Yeah.
And if you're not controlling your own mind, someone else is, or the lower mind is not paying attention to what God is trying to tell you.
well, you get, again, great read. What is the first sin in the Bible?
What do you think it is?
Self-consciousness, right? There was no stealing. When Eve took from the tree, it wasn't stealing. It wasn't murder, right? It wasn't adultery. It was self-conscious. That's the first.
Is that what we'd call it?
Yeah, from if at least my interpretation, right? There's a Frankism, you know, at me,
Frankism.
right? But yeah, but if you go down that path, right? Eve was made self-conscious of, you know, herself and that, and then when presented to Adam,
it would essentially be disobedience. Yeah, she disobeyed God.
But that's not a
That's
command.
the result.
Like that's the result.
Yeah.
But but if you really think about it, so then when presented to Adam, right? And I got pastors here, so I'm dying to see what
we
this
gotta get
looks
little
like.
buzzers, make this little trivia game.
But then when
What do
presented
they call it? Kahoot?
Who knows the Old Testament?
right? But when presented to Adam, he then became self-conscious about, hey, my wife took this, Eve took this, I now have to follow suit, right? So what was God's punishment?
Separation.
God punishes you by rewarding you with what you want. So he
Separation,
said, you are now, okay, you guys were self-conscious enough to take this when I told you not to. You will now be self-conscious about everything.
You're on your own.
Pain, and you're on your own, right? Remove them from paradise, and that's the word used, right? And so you have to be self-conscious, to Dr. Mario's point. Like, you have to have that. Now that we're here and we're all children of Adam and Eve, and that's then our punishment, right? You have to be able to use that. You have to be able to wake up one day and say, okay, I am a self-conscious being with a capital B. With that being said, how do I live?
Well,
what's my purpose? How do I make this something, this suffering and pain mean something?
So the challenge here is that, right? When you're talking about self-conscious, you're talking about the conscious mind versus the unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. The unconscious mind is equated to the CPU, right? The computer. Mm-hmm. And it runs based on programming. Man was programmed, if you want to use that terminology, we don't have to, to be in relationship with God.
Correct.
Right? So the decision to listen to the distraction and the whisper that you could do your own thing, which is what she presented to her husband, and they both made conscious decisions.
Correct.
Not spiritual decisions, because they had it all.
Correct.
And God did more. He said, command, control, name it. And so you have a choice to make today. You follow Jesus or you don't. But the alternative is you go out on your own, essentially. with Jesus, you can see and hear and feel the miracles. You can have that experience of love. So it's not about punishment. Because when you think about punishment, to me, it's, you can get incarcerated or whatever. But there's more people who are more free today behind bars because they love Jesus than there are walking around the streets because they're incarcerated in their own minds.
Absolutely.
Well, and maybe punishment's not the right word, right? Even though that's in there, but consequence.
The consequence.
Right? So
Cause, effect.
correct. So the consequence of those actions and where it led.
So let's take your story, if you will.
Well, it's not my story. I mean,
You're Adam.
Own it now.
hey,
It's actually our story as well. You're right. The garden prior to those decisions was men and women were completely at cause. They were creating, they were designing, they were naming it, they were claiming it.
correct.
The moment they go into the effect that they make the wrong decision because the result of disobedience, then they go into the effect. They start blaming who? He blames her. She blames the serpent, right? People, places, or things.
Well, that's the next part in that story. That's exactly how it goes down, right?
They disempower themselves.
and that's how it's written. Correct, guys? I hope I read the same book, right?
And Adam blames God.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
The woman you gave
You gave me. Correct. And where do
You
we
did, God.
And then where do we see that next?
God's fault.
It's your fault, right?
Right.
And where do we see that next, right? Cain and Abel, their children, right? And then that we can keep going. That's a different podcast. But then the blame.
We're going to have to bring him back.
The blame,
For sure.
and we'll tie it back in from 56 minutes ago, right? How we can sit there and say, well, we went from 200 to 100. Well, we went from this lifestyle to this life. We blame
The blame game.
and we shouldn't do that. That's the first. Okay, you made a mistake. Oh, your second mistake is blame.
Yeah,
Right now you're going habitually mistake.
I heard somebody say this: blame is be lame.
Yeah. So
Let me write that down.
So here's something I picked up in this lovely few minutes, and also besides the self-discovery that Frank has read the Bible or heard of it,
We learned something
he's
new.
read segments of it.
he has knowledge. He knows a little.
101 episodes later, we find out this about Frank.
He knows a little
you
bit
guys
about.
never asked.
It took Kevin to come here.
I'm so glad.
It took Kevin to come here.
What have you guys been doing the other 100 episodes?
All you guys do is ask money questions. Frank, how's
No.
crypto? Crypto's horrible.
See, now he's blaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I want to accentuate was the phrase, and someone said it at one point in time, I think it was during the Adam and Eve stuff, it says, we have it all, had it all. I think that's an impactful phrase. Why? And I, just to throw this out there, I was watching that movie, and I'd seen it before, but I was rewatching it because I'm on a big space kick. I wanted to be an astronaut as a kid, stars, moon, have a telescope. I'm a nerd, but you're welcome. So I was watching that movie, This Is Up, which is about the end of the world and like simulating what it would be like today with, if you've seen it. But at the end, they're all having dinner. They know the world is about to end. And like they can feel that basically a meteor hits, spoiler alert, hits the world. But they're all holding hands and they're praying. And Leonardo DiCaprio goes, we really had it all, didn't we? Before everything happened. Like, we had it all. And I thought that was so, like, you know what? No matter what was happening, and this was before the devastation, it's only then that he realizes he did have everything. Don't let it ever be too late. Like we said, ask the questions. Ask the questions, check if you're the first, if you're on the starting lineup. If someone's not pointing it out to you, maybe it's because they love you a little too much to want to point it out, and maybe they don't want to hurt your feelings. Hurt your own feelings. Ask the question to make sure.
I think it's
This is good.
It's telling. There's a lot of gold that we have been able to mine from the 30 years experience of Kevin today. We're definitely going to want to invite him
We've
back.
been mining on you this whole time.
Totally. But I heard you've got to develop a growth mindset.
Yes.
When he decided to grow and grow others, that's when things started to shift. You've got to have your own personal statement and your own vision. And that vision, he received it from God, and it turned him around. He also had two powerful encounters with other voices that gave him a word that he took and obviously then put into action. He's giving back. You've got to give back. You've got to continue to explore your passion. I heard you've got to be part of a community. You cannot do this alone.
Nope.
So many pastors, Kevin, are trying to do that. I don't get it.
So many. You take it out of the spiritual realm, take it out of the church realm, just take it in everything. People
Business.
are trying to do
Everybody.
this alone.
Yeah.
Nobody does this alone.
No,
Everybody needs community.
Correct.
You got to spend some time with the people that love you the most, and also with the people who inspire you.
Yeah.
And leaders make leaders.
Yes.
Yes.
Now to tie a bow on this whole thing,
Do it.
Are we done?
I'm going to jump back to this
Is there
question.
anything else?
No.
Oh, I'm going to ask him one last one. You know, I always have a
Oh,
last
I said I was
one.
going to ask
I
last
don't
one.
wanna
Now
be
you want
rude.
the last one. Now you have to ask the last one after him because we're
Oh,
playing,
no, I'm
we're
good.
playing the
I'm-
one-upping game. It's not fair, Dad.
See what I got to put up with, guys? Yeah. Every podcast.
So, I asked
Go
it
ahead.
earlier, and then you said, hold on, I want to jump back real quick. But what does the next 30, 300 years have for you?
Yeah. So I think, you know, for me, I'm thinking about the future, thinking about my journey, the church's journey. So look, I can't, even if I'm 35 forever, I'm not going to be 35 forever. So I'm thinking about now who and how that this thing that God did, that he built, because Jesus said it's his church and he will build his church. So what he did here with me, how can I continue to develop this and grow this and hand this off in a way so that the next generation, not my generation, the next generation can take it and run with it? Because often what happens is you build something that works for you and your generation, but the next generation comes along, they got to blow up what you did and basically do a remodel and blow the whole house up and start it again. I don't want that to happen. So my next 10 years are looking at the next generation. What do they need? What do they envision church to be like? So I'm not going to keep doing what I'm doing just because I like it. I'm going to look at what they want, and we're going to, over the next 10 years, we're going to set this thing up. So when I hand this off, it's going to be like somebody racing a baton. I'm going to just hand the baton off. They're going to keep running. They don't got to blow this thing up because the old dude kept it a certain way. That's my next 10 years.
Who's the old dude, though?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see. He's not in the room right now.
Not in the room.
Yeah.
Excellent. You have
No, I'm
no,
done.
no. You have a question.
You
better
said you had a question.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Ask your
Can't
question.
do that to the viewers and
Okay.
listeners.
All right, here's the question.
Okay, stop recording. Just stop recording right when he's asked. Right when
And
he's
you're done.
click.
Oh, look, your mic all of a sudden it doesn't work.
What is the one question we have not asked of you today that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, I think you guys have asked them all. I want to just finish where I started. And look, I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know your world, and I don't know all your spiritual journey. But I can tell you this: there is a God who loves you, who cares about you, that has plans and purposes for you that you've never even dreamed of. And this God, no matter what you heard about him, no matter what anybody else said about him, no matter what somebody told you a story about him, this God loves you. And he's got your best at heart for you. And 3 words I can tell you over 30 years: this God is faithful. He's faithful, and he will be faithful to you.
And if you're not dead, God's
Amen.
not done.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
We'll see you next time. And in case you're wondering, we want to know, how's your soul?
Mm.